My name is Zach Doms. I'm president of a company called Achieve Engagement. I know we have some members in the crowd with us today, but we're a global HR people leader community, and we design all these different learning experiences to rethink the ways in which we can achieve engagement. So we just had a program on the future of skills, and I know Dor was presenting at that, and Juno Journey was part of that program last month. So this is a really hot topic for us, so I'm excited to keep unpacking that. So I would love just to kick us off, and maybe we do a light introduction, share who you are, some of the work you're doing. But as we think about skills, what does that mean? It used to be, right, like the future of work, the future of skills. Right now, as Khalil shared, it's very much today. And now that AI is making its impact, I'm curious of your initial thoughts of how that's impacting the skills conversation. So you want to kick us off?
So you want intro and then?
Quick intro and share just initial viewpoint on the skills world. What does that mean and how AI is impacting that?
Great to be with you today. I'm Malvika Jetmalani. I'm based in Chicago, so lovely to be here with you. I'm the founder of Atvis Group, which is a human capital advisory firm driven by the core belief that to win in the marketplace, businesses must first win in the workplace. And because I like to torture myself and take on too much, I'm also the founder of a community called Women Shaping AI, which exists to equip women with the knowledge and tools and networks to thrive in the age of AI. And I think the way that AI is impacting the skills conversation is, I could go on about that topic, but I will keep it brief and say that I think technical skills are becoming more and more commoditized in the age of AI. It's becoming easier to gain expertise and knowledge. And so I think we are entering a world where soft skills, or as I like to call them, power skills, are going to be a differentiator for all of us. So I will leave it at that.
All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Is this on? Yeah. I'm Jenna Filipkowski. I'm the head of learning and development at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and I must preface that everything I say today is my views and not that of the Federal Reserve System. No ticket. So it's great to be here. So my background, I'm an organizational psychologist, so my field has been obsessed with skills for like the last 50 years. Like that's how we think about work, is what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that get work done. So to me, skills, like, humans are made of skills and capability. Like that's nothing new to me. I'm really interested in this idea of tasks that Morty was talking about. Like, how do we break down work even further into tasks and think about the work that needs to get done? And to do that, I really think you have to have managers who really understand where the strategy is and where you're going, and connect the work and the roles back to that. So that's what I'm focused on. I'm the head of learning, so I have a team of instructional designers, program managers, facilitators, coaches who are responsible for upskilling and reskilling our workforce, which is 3,000 people here in New York.
I think you already know who I am, so I'll just share just like very quickly. Like in the tech world, it was always like based on a meritocracy. Like whatever you're able to do, like that's ultimately what will open doors for you. And I think that the idea of like skills in an AI world does allow, if organizations allow it, to basically identify and find talent anywhere in the organization and have those people become visible and seen, if you will, for it. So I think in technology in general, like Zoom started this during COVID, where normally in order for you to sit in a meeting, like you have to rank very high, and now suddenly there's no limit to how many people you can have in a meeting, so people can get visibility. And I think now if you are able to do the work that AI allows you to do, for those people who are doing great work, they can be seen in an organization.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm super happy to have you all with us today. My name is Dor with one O, right? One O. It's not a door. Yeah. Though hopefully that by the end of this day, we will open a door for you. A door for more community members, more networking, but as well as a bit of understanding about what's going on right now, right? Because skills are part of this big shift that we're all going through, AI. By raising your hands, how many of you already used the Atlas by OpenAI, the new browser? All right. The reason why I'm asking is because the speed of change is unbelievable. And when we think about what will help us humans to go through this term is probably one thing, the new currency of the world, which is skills. I know that for a few years, L&Ds and analysts keep on talking about how skills are the currencies of the world, but nowadays the ability to learn fast, agility and skills will probably be the most important thing that each and every one of us as individuals will need to acquire. In the past, I would say 6.5 years, I've been fortunate to lead Juno Journey as one of the founders of the company and the CEO of the company, working with hundreds of organizations worldwide, American public companies, banks, and so on and so forth. And what we do the best, I think, is to help them to see their employees in a different way, which is how we can help them to be better at their job. And that's it.
So we got a good power crew up here. Can we give them a round of applause for just taking some time out? That's awesome. Since the other panelists are still getting warmed up, Morty, I'm gonna go to you first, and then we'll get into the good stuff. You shared an awesome timeline at the beginning of your presentation about kind of the evolutions and new innovations that have come out through the years. And I feel like when I've seen organizations become aware of this, there's this kind of huge hype period and a lot of spending, investment going into it. And then sometimes, and we've seen it today, like a lot of people's investments are not actually panning out with AI so far, or their adoption isn't going so well. So I'm just curious of how do you best see AIs engaging and adopting AI and not falling maybe victim to like the hype element? And I'm already seeing certain organizations build out these huge AI innovation teams or AI transformation teams, and then nothing is really actually being adopted. So what are some of your recommendations or thoughts on how we can start to adopt this within our workforce?
Yeah, two things. I'll say, like, earlier in my career, like I was really a graphic designer that kind of fell into this world, but like the digital camera came out, and that was like incredible, right? It was the lowest quality. It was horrible. People don't realize, like, Kodak invented the digital camera, right? And now they're the bankrupt one. Like, how did that happen, right? And because they were protecting their film business, like that was very important, at least for them. So it was always going to be like a low quality toy, at least from that perspective, right? So like what got me interested, at least in that space, and ultimately led me to Adobe, was the fact that this is the future, and it was more about understanding what the benefits of the camera really offered. It wasn't necessarily the fact that the images were of high quality that it could replace that, but there were other aspects of it, right? There's an amazing book called The Innovator's Dilemma. It's like probably a book that, it was supposedly the only book that Steve Jobs ever recommended that people should read. It was initially done as like just a focus on strategy for products, but I think now in the world of AI, it applies to everything. And it's ultimately like, how do I disrupt myself, right? And a lot of us jump to say, like, we look at AI today, we go, it doesn't do this as well as I do. Okay, but technology moves very quickly. Like, before you knew it, the digital camera was a whole lot better than the other cameras, right? So technology scales very, very quickly. So I think if an organization is smart, I think you need to do two things. The first thing is that don't like look at technology as a toy. Don't like dismiss it and say AI, like try it once, it failed, it didn't do what I expected to do, and then now judge it and say that's it, it's not capable of doing this thing. You have to realize that it's continuously getting better. So look at it as like coming from a place of curiosity, continue to play with it, but think about it as like playing, not necessarily as like this is going to change my strategy. The other part is like, don't measure it in the same way that you measure the regular metrics of your organization. Like today, to be successful, you're saying like this team is measured by this number of sales, this dollar amount of sales, this amount of output. Look at it as just like, what are the things that it's capable of doing? That's interesting from that perspective. But measure its success using a completely different metric that your regular organization is using, because it will never be able to match that element, or it'll fool you, at least in that. So those are the two things that I would recommend.
I love that mindset also that you brought up about viewing it as a team and not as much as a tool. And I think about when you bring in new hires, and depending on how strict or cutthroat your organization might be, if they fail, you're not immediately eliminating your thoughts or buying with them, right?
I saw just an amazing quote, just yesterday I saw this, about the approach to, like, it was a question before about like entry-level people. And it was, a person was saying, if I was a company today, I would be running to hire kids out of college that are digital natives. Like, they grew up using AI, and my first thing I want them to do is teach everyone at my company how they use AI, right? That's ultimately kind of like when I go back to like thinking about that. So I think it's to that point also, like just understanding how, a different person can kind of come to a team and completely plant a different seed than maybe was there before.
To follow up, especially as you lead an organization that's also supporting organizations go through this shift, especially on becoming skills-based, adopting these, developing people, becoming AI-enabled as well. I'm curious, how have you seen those conversations go with getting executive buy-in and getting them to engage and buy-in into this future?
Well, that's a great question, which I will try to break down into two. The first thing is what's happening right now, because most of us will speak about this shift from the perspective of AI, the technology. But really, what really happens right now with executives is the fact that there is a different shift. There's a huge shift in what we see as business strategy, right? Up until now, for many companies, as part of their business strategy, they needed to create moats, right? Technological moat, product differentiations, and so on and so forth. But now, with this new wave of AI, it removes all moats. And you go back to the drawing board and you need to ask yourself, what will be my next moat? And the thing that I'm hearing quite a lot recently from executives is that we need to learn fast, we need to execute fast, we need to be super agile, and we must have the relevant skills. So I think that what changed executives' buy-in right now, at least when it comes to adoption of new technologies that can support employees with gaining new skills and so on and so forth, is the fact that it finally aligns with business strategy, right? Because think about learning in organizations up until now, like up until a few years ago. Morty came from LinkedIn Learning. It was a huge hype, but do we really manage to connect between LinkedIn Learning and business impact? I don't think so. And what happens right now is the fact that suddenly this gap between learning and business strategy is being 1 point. That's it. It becomes one. So I think that it's definitely the main reason why we see such a big change in the way that executives capture learning and development.
I love that you kind of hit on a couple key skills you're seeing executives needing and looking for, right? That agility, that change mindset, that adaptability. So I'd love to now shift and talk a little bit how does that change career ladders and career frameworks and how we look and view and build our talent. And Malvika, I'll pass it to you next. And I can hand over the mic if you two want to keep it over there. But especially as your role as a CHRO at multiple organizations, traditionally we're thinking job titles and responsibilities that way, but now that's becoming less and less relevant, and we're starting to think, okay, what are the actual tasks and skills that are necessary? How do you start to view maybe career frameworks differently now that that's the transition we're going for?
Yeah, so Morty touched on this a little bit in his presentation, this idea that career growth is no longer linear, and you're not necessarily going to go from analyst to senior analyst to manager to director, right? So I like to think of it as we're going from career ladders to lily pads. So you might have some horizontal experiences, some stretch assignments and projects before you can move on to the next phase of your career. The learning opportunities are abundant. And the way that I like to think about it also is Microsoft released a report earlier this year called the Work Trend Index. And in it, they talked about this idea of the frontier firm. And they talk about how we're moving away from org charts toward a world of work charts. And this idea of work charts is pretty much exactly what Morty was talking about, which is we need to start thinking about organizations not as hierarchies of boxes and wires, but as a collection of tasks and responsibilities that need to be accomplished in order to move the business forward. And so when they compare it to the idea of making a movie, where if you're making a movie, you bring together a team of experts that have the skills in their specific domain and have the right proficiency of skills. And when the project is done, the team disbands. And so they argue that we are moving increasingly toward a world where leaders will play this role of curating the right teams, humans and agents, to accomplish the tasks that need to be accomplished. And we're going to be more outcome or project oriented versus being so focused on titles and curating teams based on titles. So that's kind of how I think about this shift.
Yeah. And Jenna, I'll pass it to you next, but who loves the concept of lily pads, right? And I think that kind of aligns well with even engagement research and studies and kind of the growth of the gig economy. like a lot of talent and people today want the opportunities to lily pad and get into different projects and types of work, and don't really want to be constricted to the linear career pathway. So even from an engagement standpoint, I think it's really advantageous for us to like engage with that side of things, which tees up my question to you, Jenna, of how, especially from an IO psychology background, what are some of the different types of like mindset shifts and kind of paradigms should we look to kind of grow and develop, especially within leadership or managers, to embrace maybe this more nonlinear career framework?
Yeah, it's a great question. And over the past few years, our organization went through like a job architecture transformation, and we're a very old institution, have a lot of tenure, so it's really helping people understand this mindset that learning and development isn't transactional, but it's an investment you're making. And when you make an investment, you never really know when it's going to pay off or how much, but we have to have that trust that you need to be developing yourself, and it's going to look like a lily pad versus a ladder. And a lot of people are having a lot of hard time with that. It's very transactional in terms of like, I do these things, I get this promotion, so how do we help people say that's not the way the world works anymore, and that's fine, but we're going to support you in this new way as well. So it requires a lot of trust, it requires a lot of showing where it does work when people have made the investment in themselves, going above and beyond what that pays off in terms of their career, how it helps the business move forward. So a lot of my job is just helping people along that journey.
Morty, to follow that up, you brought up kind of the integration between managers and individual contributors. This might be like a little bit of a two-part question. One, I'm curious of your thoughts of how do we engage, or what do we do with managers if they're like, I want to manage a team, I don't want to be an individual contributor anymore. What does that conversation look like? Because I even think about us as a community at Achieve Engagement, if part of the, like, traditionally or historically, the value was in the intellectual knowledge that the manager has, and that value is kind of going away because everyone has access to that. I'm thinking even as a community, like, okay, what's the purpose of our events if anyone can access that now, right? On the other hand, are there other use cases and things that come to mind when you think about managers and individual contributors that want to engage with this, if kind of their roles and the responsibilities are changing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like to what Jenna was saying before, like I think it's much more of a human emotional thing than anything else. Like in full transparency, like the reason why I'm not at LinkedIn anymore is because the need for a manager was not there anymore, right? And I had made that choice that like I was going to be a manager. There were plenty of other individual contributor roles that I could have gone to, but they were in certain areas that I was not passionate about, right, from that perspective. So it was a very difficult choice to make, right? But I mean, Microsoft recently, like, I don't know, got rid of a whole bunch of middle management. Like, it's completely like upending and changing, I think, the way our organizations are thinking about things. And the question is just going to come down to like, I don't think we figured out how this shakes out, right? It's up to every organization to basically, like, I don't know, define what a success means in each of these things that they're trying to do, and how they're going to build teams to do that. Like, I love the idea of like, the future is just going to be like a whole bunch of people who you now spin up a team to do that particular project. Project gets done, and now it doesn't mean that like you got a promotion because of that, and now you earn your promotion is you earn another project with some of the skills that you picked up from that one with a brand new team, at least from that perspective. So I don't think it's a clear answer. I think organizations need to figure out what that is. But I think that we as humans who work at organizations just need to get out of that mindset of like, okay, this is a path towards, usually it comes down to money, at least from that. But increasingly a lot though, it's like, I could have stayed at LinkedIn, but those roles were not, or those tasks that were available to do were not ones that I was interested in investing my time in. So figuring out what the right tasks are, I think is going to be a part of that.
I also think it's kind of interesting to think about. There's probably a lot of managers out there that want to be managers, but not of people. You know what I mean? Like, how many like grow from individual contributors like into leadership roles because they're like, okay, that's my next step. That's how I get paid more. That's how I keep growing. But they don't actually want to lead humans, right? So there might be like a really attractive
I had to mention
piece
this,
to
that humans are messy, right?
Yeah.
Agents don't talk back. They don't go on vacation or whatever it is. So there's a line.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, they don't have bad mornings, right? They don't carry that into the work. So, okay.
When AWS goes down.
Exactly. When AWS goes down, they
Yeah. When there's an outage, right? That's a bad morning for your team. Okay. I'd love to now shift a little bit more specifically how this is impacting L&D, and like how do we start to build this department, this function to support just becoming even more skills-based, but also the engagement with AI as an organization. I'm curious, raise your hands. How many of you actively lead or touch the L&D function? Okay, pretty much everyone. So I'd be curious for all of you too, if you have specific questions, this would be a good time to jump in. But Jenna, I'll pass it to you to kick us off because you're obviously leading L&D today. How are you starting to maybe evolve your traditional L&D programs with becoming skills-based, but also the experimentation, adoption, the literacy of AI?
Yeah, so I got into this job in December of last year, and one of my first things I did was we had these large programs that were touching like 15 topics at once. So it's like we need to be more discreet and operational when it comes to our training. So what about communication are we training here? What about these soft skills really matter? And breaking that apart and then tying that all skills to our job so people can find what skills matter for their current job and their next job. So that was a big part of my job. With my team, what I'm trying to do is connect to business strategy and connect to business problems. A lot of them are very traditional learning people, which is fantastic because they're very talented, but they also just think in their terms of like their learning silo. They don't really think about business problems or how to make people better in their job. They just want to deliver something in front of the classroom a lot of the time. And they're great at it, but like how to, as a leader, help them connect and help them see and find business problems is what I'm trying to do with them. Does that answer your question? Or in AI, I think we're early. Like I don't think my team, and we're a highly regulated, highly information security challenge. So in terms of we don't have all the AI tools at our disposal, we have a few, but it's not enough for my team to go faster and better yet. But I'm still like they're curious. They want to use more. So we think of it as like where can we get some AI into our instructional design, where we can get AI into some facilitation notes, but we're not at the agent level or anything yet. I would like to be soon, but it's going to be a long journey for us.
Yeah, I think AI readiness is an interesting topic, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that next. But how, depending on what industry or type of organization you're in, some might be like the wild, wild west, and they're like, let's invest any tool, let's dump all our company data into it, we don't really care, just start using it. And then you have highly regulated organizations that are like, no, slow down, pump the brakes, it's got to go through these channels. So there's like organizational readiness, but then there's also like our competencies as individuals, right, to use this. And from your point of view, I would love to hear, like, as you're talking with organizations or CHROs to understand their AI readiness, what are some of the things that you ask or talk about or look for to especially maybe see where they're at and where we go next?
Sure. So a couple of things. First, I like to understand how involved is the leadership team. And I don't mean sending a memo and declaring we're an AI-first company. I mean, are they in the tools? Are they role modeling the behaviors that they seek in others? That, to me, is a make or break. And so if that's not happening, that's where we start. Another thing I look for is, do you have AI-ready data? Data is not the most glamorous conversation, but you need to have AI-ready data. You need to have things documented, workflows documented, if you want to successfully build agents, if you want to take advantage of AI. Because today, a lot of the knowledge lives in people's heads. And so if we don't somehow capture that legacy knowledge and that tacit knowledge as people are leaving and as you experience churn, that knowledge is walking away, and it's going to become even harder to bring the AI agents in. The other thing I look for is, Jenna touched on this and Morty touched on this in his presentation too, is there clarity of vision? Is there a business problem, goal, or pain point that you're trying to solve, rather than using AI as sort of a peanut butter approach? And then psychological safety. We were talking before this session as we were all networking that as HR people, we talk a lot about psychological safety, and sometimes I can see the actual eye rolls when I say the words psychological safety, but psychological safety is truly so, so important, especially in this uncertain time. People need to know that they can ask the hard questions. They need to know that they can push back. They need to know that they can try and experiment and fail and then try again. That's how we all learn. And then the last thing I'll say is, if you don't have buy-in at the top, if you don't have clarity around leadership alignment, that creates a ripple effect through the rest of the organization. So you need to get very clear around why you're bringing AI into the organization. Are you of the mindset that we need efficiency AI, or are you of the mindset that we need opportunity AI? Efficiency AI is, we're just going to do the same things that we're doing now, but faster, better, cheaper. Opportunity AI is what Morty was talking about earlier, which is, how do we explore what is the art of the possible here? So that is the level of clarity that I look for, especially at the leadership level.
Like, as an organization, you're all pretty ready to start engaging. A lot of work done, a couple of you. What about now your people, like competencies, leaders to kind of start owning? No, not many. Okay, a couple. So I thought those were some great questions for some of you. Hopefully, like taking some notes of like, okay, here's some of the things that maybe we can start asking, especially the C-suite, to measure and engage with to help identify like, okay, where do we need to go to work? Dora, I'd love to pass it back to you now, and thinking more about the readiness and areas of focus for the L&D side. And you shared some great examples, or Khalil shared some great examples about like even use cases that agents can start taking over on the L&D side, like career coaches or building curriculum and things like that. So one, I'm curious of your thoughts on, especially as you enable L&D functions within companies in this space, what are areas the L&D leaders in the room should look to leverage AI, especially as a part of their team? And then what are areas that you think the leaders are like, no, this is the part that we need to keep owning? Like, these are the parts that we should be really focusing our time on.
And I should be very specific.
Give us the playbook.
Let me start with, generally speaking, we need to understand how we look at the AI capabilities versus human capabilities, right? Who thinks that they can compete with LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, in data analysis? Raising your hands? No. Yes? You can compete? All right. The way I see it, AI is super good at specific topics, right? Patterns, automation, workflows, whatever you can think of. And this is exactly, and I'm going to talk about it, this is exactly why probably in learning and development there are so many operational sides of L&D that we want to get rid of, which up until now force us to go back to visit the past instead of visiting the future. I'm talking about, hey, we need those reports. Hey, we need you to help us to update a specific course. We need to craft something. We need to. And I think that in those areas, AI will be much better than us, specifically in L&D. However, there are a few things that human will be much better than AI. If we think about it, AI without context means nothing. And here is an example for you. So context, motivation, and so many other stuff that AI can't actually do for us, I think that this is what we need to focus on as humans. And to use AI today as a complement and not as a supplement to people. And here's a great example. So there is this great lady, learning and development leader, which I'm familiar with. And one day she was called by her vice president of products. And he was telling her that he needs her help. And she was, okay, great. I'm an L&D. I'm here for you. What do you need? And he was, I need to create a data analysis workshop right now, immediately. And she was, okay, before we jump straight to the drawing board, what's the reason? What's the challenge that you try to tackle right now? And he is, listen, we heavily invested in our product releases in the last couple of months, but we see zero change in our product metrics results. And she was, they had this back and forth of questions, and eventually she realized that the context is super important. the company shifted from small businesses to big enterprises. And she realized that product managers never spoke directly with the customer, which is a completely different attitude in product design when it comes to B2B, enterprise B2B, or small businesses. And with this context, they were able to take the challenge and basically to craft a totally different workshop, which is how to ask your customers the right questions instead of looking at data. So context is something that we as humans can bring to the table. And it means, at least in my eyes, that it gives L&D right now the right to be a strategic partner, right? Because instead of wasting our time on creating courses, updating materials, pulling reports, those things we can give it to our extension team members, as Morty said, the agents. And this is exactly what we do at Juno Journey. What we try to do is to build an extension team for learning and development leaders so they will be able to focus on what matters, which is asking and understanding the right context. And that's it, I think.
I remember one of our leaders at our AI at Work program earlier this year, they kind of shared how as organizations become more AI powered, AI kind of driven within the customer experience, the products they're designing, everything else, the biggest differentiators would be the humans behind it, driving it, right? So I think that kind of, you really capture kind of that element. It's like it's really important to still have some of that context and that creative thinking behind the AI lens to make sure it's driving the impact that you're looking for. So I know we have a couple minutes left here. I'd love to open up the floor. What questions do you have for this powerhouse group? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for fun. So something that you brought up, which is extremely relevant, is how do we test the effective use of AI, right? So our leadership team, I'm grateful, the company I was with was very invested in using AI, and there was this huge push, and we had Gemini launched for everyone, and we would track who are the super users and who's not using it enough. But very quickly, they said, okay, we want to make this part of performance reviews. And I was like, let's take a few steps back and figure out like what even is effective use of AI. Does that look the same in any way, shape, or form for all the teams? Does it look different for every team? How we define exactly what that looks like? So I'm curious from all of you, have you found consistent indicators of using AI well? Or have you found alternative approaches that help you to identify what that should look like in each team or department to really track that it's being used effectively and strategically?
I want to expand the question too. This is a great question. A question came up in our network about also who's accountable for those performance issues. Is it AI and its ineffectiveness, or the driver and the person behind it? And if it's being used in performance reviews, am I held accountable for the faults of AI, but can I also take on the benefits if it's helping my role? So does anyone want to approach this question?
Someone?
Yeah. This is a question I grapple with almost every day. I don't think anyone has a perfect answer, but I'll give you some kind of initial thoughts. So when I hear a company talk about we want to assess people in their performance reviews about how much they're using AI, one of the questions I ask is, how do you define AI usage? So if I draft an email to send to you and I have ChatGPT draft that email and I spend 2 minutes editing it and making it sound like it's my voice, who drafted that email, AI or me? If I spend 10 minutes editing it, does your answer change, right? And so I try to get them to think about, what do you mean? Because just measuring activity does not mean that you're getting the right business outcomes. Also, a lot of leaders talk about AI productivity, but we also have productivity leakage. So let's say, I use an AI tool now to create PowerPoints, and what used to take me like 7 to 8 hours now takes me probably 1 to 2 hours to create a PowerPoint. What am I doing with that time saved? Am I going and taking more coffee breaks? Am I going and collaborating with other colleagues, or am I actually moving the work forward that the organization wants me to move forward? And so what that brings me to is the best way that I have found is to track the business outcomes that the business cares about. Whether it's we're going to use AI to improve our sales velocity, or to reduce our DSO, or to increase our response time to customer tickets. That is the best way that I have found thus far. Identify the business problem, goal, or pain point that you're trying to solve with AI, and then measure that over time and see how it's trending. But